Welcome back to another episode of the Talking Heads podcast. My guest today is Clayton Crowley. How you doing, man? Thanks for coming on.
Good. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan of your videos, so I'm excited to hear about what kind of work goes into them. Do you kind of want to explain what kind of YouTube videos you make to the uninitiated out there?
Sure, yeah. So about a year ago, I started making videos about basketball, the NBA, and specifically, I made an 8-video series taking 8 basketball players and making the case for each of them as the greatest of all time. So I made the case for why Michael Jordan's the greatest ever and why LeBron James is the greatest player ever and Wilt Chamberlain and all 8 of these guys. And since then, I've kind of, tried to figure out what other stuff to make. And so I've just started another series of 8 basketball teams, all as the greatest of all time.
What made you decide to start making these videos in the first place?
I would say it's just something I've always been interested in, or not always. In high school, I didn't care about sports until I was like 16 in high school. But ever since then, I've just been obsessed with the history of sports and like going all the way back to when these sports got started and the best players from way back in the day. And it's just stuff I was always thinking about. And my favorite conversations with my friends were about who's better, what's this guy, how does he stack up to that guy and all that stuff. I've always been really interested and I've always loved that stuff. So in college, I really started thinking about it. And eventually I decided, I watch a lot of YouTube. I know how to edit video. I know how to write. Why don't I try to throw all this together and see how it goes?
What did you go to college for? It seems like you kind of have a journalism background, was what my guess was.
I went to college at Clemson University in South Carolina. There isn't a journalism program there, or at least not. I don't think there is a journalism program, certainly not sports journalism. But while I was there, I was a writer for the school newspaper for the sports section. And then by the time I was a senior, I was the sports editor of the whole sports section. So I do have some experience doing that. And then once I graduated from that, I did about a year and a half of sports radio here in where I live in the town. So I tried to kind of like round out all my skill sets. I was like, all right, I did the writing in college. I did the, audio, the radio stuff. So why don't I, try it out on the video? And the video ended up being, a conglomeration of all those things coming together. And it ended up paying better than all of them. So
yeah, there you go.
Kind of worked out.
Yeah, it is the perfect marriage of kind of all those things. So who would you say that you're making these videos for? I know you kind of talked about how your fondest memories are kind of talking who's the best with your friends. Yeah. Is that kind of who these videos are geared towards? Honestly,
and I listened to you talk to Super Eyepatch Wolf, and he kind of said the same thing about, he's making videos for himself and what he wants to see, and about making videos that he's interested in. And I think it's very much that same thing where I don't think specific target demographic in mind other than just myself. It's more of like, what would I want to watch on the internet? What would I be interested in consuming? And this is the kind of stuff that interests me. So probably like-minded people like me. It's the people who are obsessive about it and are willing to watch a 20-minute video about a basketball player that retired in like 1969. I understand that's probably not all sports fans, but it's kind of a niche area that I think there are, a certain amount of people there for. So people like me, I guess.
There's lots of them out there, apparently.
I'm surprised at how many so far. Yeah.
No. Yeah. I've started watching you earlier last year. It might have been around. I think the Tim Duncan making the case video was
I think that was the first thing I made. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you made any YouTube channels before this? This is like your first venture into it?
Yeah. No. I started. I'd never uploaded anything to YouTube other than as a way to like share videos with my friends, because when I was in college and learning how to video edit for one of my classes, I just took like a half semester video editing class. I would make stuff that I just thought would be funny and send it to my friends through YouTube because they were too big to just text to each other. And that was all I did. So no, so up until that Tim Duncan, and those were all just like 5-6 minute like goofy videos or with a couple edits here and there. Making a 20-something minute video that's all heavily edited and scripted and all that stuff was a big jump. So that was really the first thing I ever did.
Yeah, I had something similar to that, the sharing videos thing in high school. I took a Photoshop class and me and my buddy we had the class at different hours, but we sat in the same computer. So we would always like Photoshop the weirdest shit and like leave it on the computer for him to find, you know?
Oh my God. Yeah. I would, Photoshop stuff and leave them as like the default background of like computers in the library and just like the weirdest shit.
So, yeah. I mean, kind of getting into process a little bit here.
Sure.
We kind of talked about where you kind of spawn the idea for the making the case. How do you kind of pick other topics? Because I know you got a couple other videos on your channel too that aren't necessarily making the case.
I think the process for finding out the videos for the first series, the Making the Case series for the players, was very spontaneous. It was very organic, where it was just something I was thinking about. I kind of made in my head, I was like, well, I think this player's better than this player. And I actually went to my friend at the time and said, who do you think is better, LeBron or Kobe? And he's like, Kobe. And I'm like, why? He's like, 5 championships. So I laid out this whole case of why, there's actually a lot of gray area and distinction. And I said, so do you think Robert Horry, who's like a role player with 7 championships? I'm like, do you think Robert Horry's better than Michael Jordan? He's like, yeah, he has 7 rings. I'm like, what? And he's like, I'm like, who do you think? Yeah, I'm like, who do you think's the best ever? And he's like, Bill Russell, 11 rings. I'm like, okay, I get it. So that at least, and he was joking the whole time, but it was really funny because it opened me up to the idea of, oh my gosh, all of this is so subjective. It depends on what you value in evaluating these players and in sports, and what you enjoy is just what you enjoy. It's very subjective. So that was the process for finding out that first series. And the whole time I was making it, I was thinking, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And then at first I was kind of like, I'll just steady progress into it. But then like, it happened a little bit sooner than I thought, where it's like, okay, now I have 30,000 subscribers and I have 40,000 subscribers. And I was just like, I don't know what to make next. So between finishing that and starting this new series was very much trying to decide what I should make. And it was kind of like, I'd write some ideas on a piece of paper and I'd make the videos and they'd be okay, or I'd spend too long trying to make them perfect. And I just end up not liking it very much because I didn't enjoy the process of making it, because it felt more like I'm supposed to be making these instead of, oh, this is what I really want to make. So up until I started making these, I just put out that one video of this new series, and that was like, oh yeah, this is what I really enjoy. This is what I like. Just making long form stuff, even though it takes forever and it's hard to do. It's just what I enjoy. And so since then, since I've realized what I enjoy making, now I've got my whiteboard just full of players I want to talk about and teams I want to talk about, and just realizing what I enjoy making has now made me so much more excited. And now I just have so many ideas where I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get to all of them, which is a really exciting, really exciting prospect.
Which Making the Case video has been the hardest to make so far?
That's a funny question, because I know the answer in my head and I think about it all the time, but nobody's ever asked me. It was the hardest one easily was the Michael Jordan video, because I started making these videos before quarantine, before COVID, and then COVID hit, and then The Last Dance came out, which is like the combination of, it's in quarantine, it's about Michael Jordan, it's incredibly well done. It's just one of the best sports docuseries, miniseries, whatever, ever. It's incredible, and I absolutely love it. And it had just wrapped up like 3 weeks before I put out the Michael Jordan video. So I have to contend with one of the best sports documentaries of all time in my head, going, okay, I can't make The Last Dance because everybody just watched it. What else do I do? And at the time, I was also working at the radio station where I was in there for 5-6 hours a day. So I was trying to write and edit and research and all stuff in my free time. And it was just like no rest, no sleep, working weekends. It was just a lot.
The grind.
And it was, and then it was just a grind. And I hated every second. I didn't hate every second of it, but it was really, really tough.
You got to think that The Last Dance might have helped that video a little bit too. You get a spike in interest in Michael Jordan for people who aren't necessarily basketball fans.
Totally. And it's those kind of things where after the fact, you look back and go, oh yeah, that probably did help. It probably wasn't that bad. But in the moment, it was just horrible because of the time constraints, because of the pressure of trying to be different from The Last Dance and try to say something about Michael Jordan being the greatest basketball player of all time that hasn't already been said.
Yeah. So what was your angle on that? Did you find like a cool kind of way to present it, you think?
I think and I saw some comments saying this. It wasn't as much of a case for it was the case against Michael Jordan. It was like
a rebuttal to the art.
Yeah, it's like a pre-made response to somebody saying he isn't the greatest.
It's like the end of 8 Mile when he says everything that the guy's about to say.
He's like, I know what you're gonna say. These are all of your critiques, and I've got answers for all of them.
Dude,
yeah.
That's
so that
awesome.
was I guess of all the angles, that was kind of it. And I just wanted to end it on him making his last shot, which won him his last shot as a Chicago Bull was to win the NBA Finals and win him his 6th championship. That was such a cool buildup, and I'd never seen a video just end dead straight on that moment. I was like, I have to put that in there. So that was kind of the structure that I wanted to put on it that I guess I hadn't seen before.
So on the other side of that coin, what's been like your favorite player to kind of like write about or research, or I guess teams, since you're doing teams now?
Sure. As far as the teams, I've only done, a couple of them so far. For the teams, the 1986 Boston Celtics, Larry Bird's best team, were just phenomenal. They were so good. And going back and watching them is just incredible, thinking that that's 35 years ago, but you just see the way they play and you're like, oh, you could put that into the game today, where some other teams were so predicated on the restrictions of the era or the trends of the era, they couldn't translate between eras. But they could, certainly. As far as the players go, Bill Russell was just a blast to make. He represents like this whole, I enjoy getting into the storytelling narrative, colorful language of basketball, I guess. And so Bill Russell was the guy who didn't have a bunch of stats. He didn't impress you too much with how physically imposing he was. And he retired in 1969. He's decades away from having played. All of his footage is in black and white, but he won 11 championships. And by all accounts, he's like the best defender ever and just such an inspiring leader. And so being able to take a crack at that story and try to get in there and learn about him and what kind of person he was. And it was just wonderful. It was a pleasure to learn about him and to write about him and to try to, wax poetically about such an awesome, incredible player and an incredible person.
So what kind of research goes into these videos?
It's the best part of the process is the research, because I just, I Google their names or the teams, and I try to find as much as I possibly can to read about them from, reputable sources, newspapers from the towns that they played in, Sports Illustrated articles, ESPN articles, and then I'll try to get books. If I have, I have a bunch of sports books. If I have any that specifically reference these players or teams, I'll see if there's anything valuable that I can get out of those. And then I'll just go to YouTube and I'll have my list of all my articles, and I'll try to find the most important or most viewed games that they played or videos about them. And then I just go all in on those for like a whole week, where it's just reading about them, taking notes, jotting down ideas, watching the games that people are talking about, watching, the highlight films and watching the retrospective things and watching the interviews with them now that several years have gone by. So it's usually like a whole week of just reading and reading and reading and watching and watching and watching as much as I possibly can to get as full of a context as I can for players and teams that I really wasn't around to watch.
So how do you organize all that kind of raw information that you gather? Do you have like a system of how you kind of structure your scripts or anything like that?
Sure. Yeah. There's a bunch of revisions to everything as I go through it, so the first thing I'll do, I'll find all my articles and I'll just Google the teams and I'll just favorite each tab and bookmark them. So I just get a huge Google tab or a huge bookmark, folder of all of these articles and videos. And as I read or watch them, I just jot down interesting ideas or tidbits or quotes or whatever, strikes me as I'm doing this. And then that gets revised into, more complete thoughts. And then that gets revised into a more complete outline. And then that I take into, actually writing the script, which the outline I spend a lot of time checking out. So, a lot of revision on the notes and the and the thoughts and the outline, so that by the time I get to the script, I usually only have to do, 2 or 3 revisions to that, because that is painful to have to revise a whole 13-page script and go, this is all shit. I need to redo all of this,
Yeah. So it seems like you put a lot of emphasis on that pre-scripting phase, the outline. Like
totally. Yeah. And it's one of those things you learn in like middle school and high school about like, this is how you do a research paper, and you read your notes and you take them and you outline, and then you're just like, this sucks. I fucking hate this.
Yep.
And then now I'm doing it all the time. Yeah.
So which has been harder to make in your opinion? Has it been the individual player making the case videos, or is it the team base making the case videos?
I would say, well, they both have certain challenges. And because I'm not as far deep into the teams yet, I would say the players, because of time constraints, because I was, working 2 jobs and there was a pandemic and that all sucked. It was the first thing I did. I didn't know that this was what I enjoyed doing it at the time, but I didn't know what I was doing after. So there was always, even as much as I enjoyed it, there was always this hang up of like, all right, this is really fun and people are getting it and people are enjoying it, but what am I going to give them next? Whereas now I know what to expect. I know the process. I have the process filled out a little bit more. I feel like I am slowly starting to develop a voice that I can trust and rely on. And, it just, and because I know I enjoy, or because I know it's what I enjoy, and because I know what I'm going to try to do next, it's a lot more grounding, fulfilling, I can take a lot more comfort and enjoy the process, really.
So what would you say your voice is that you're starting to discover?
Somebody who's obsessed with basketball for whatever reason. I mean, that's at a core, and not just like, oh, did you see that dunk and stuff? It's like, no, I want to talk to you about the 1967 76ers and how insane they were, and the fact that just the most in-depth, obsessive, from like so long ago that you shouldn't even care about them. And so I try to take that and put enthusiasm into it and try to, I've always thought that reading sports writers or watching people who make video essays, even about topics that I'm not particularly interested in. There was one about a Magic the Gathering card, I think, the Black Lotus, that has like 2 or 3 million views on YouTube. And I don't know anything about that, but it's such an incredibly interesting video. Being able to talk about something, whether or not people know about it, in an engaging and interesting way is like the best benchmark you can hope to achieve. And so I don't know if that's a voice for me, but that's certainly what I try to achieve, is to try to be interesting and enthusiastic about it and try to bring in stuff that you might not know or care about and try to make you care about it while learning about it.
Yeah, I remember I was watching the Bird and Magic making the case videos, and I was seeing a lot of clips like from that documentary on HBO. Dude, it is making me. I almost had to put it back out. I haven't watched that in a while. See, I think that's another thing too. You get me excited about watching basketball again, and like these old old clips that you obsess about in high school. Like when you're just learning about these players, I think that's what it's kind of making me feel like when I watch your videos.
Yeah, it's funny too, because another benchmark, I make the videos for me and people who just might be interested in it, but I run everything by like my friends and my parents who don't care about sports. And so like my mom's a great benchmark for like, I'll read her script and be like, do you think this is interesting? You don't care about sports. You don't watch basketball. But if I can get her interested in it, if I can make her go, ooh, that is interesting. Oh, I didn't like that, or, whatever. That to me is a big hurdle. And if I can clear that, then I'm gravy.
So do you have a video you're most proud of in that sense, like that you took something that you got your mom super interested in and you couldn't believe it?
Oh, the mom test. I think the mom test video is probably Tim Duncan, because it was the first thing I made, and it was something where I was working on it for months, and they knew I was working on it, but they didn't know what it was going to be because I'd never made anything like that before. So when I showed it to them, and they were just, I remember my dad went, holy fuck, that was really good. And like the surprise in his voice was just like, I did it. I got him.
Yeah, you did. That's awesome.
And so that video probably ranks up there, but just the one that I enjoyed making the most was still the Bill Russell one. I think it, from beginning to end, and even the video itself, I still love it. I think it's structured really well. I think it builds up to something cool. I enjoy that video the most.
Do you have a system in your head? I mean, obviously you do. So what's your system for ranking these players?
Again, it's subjective. And this is the thing where I made a Q&A after I finished my series about like, who do I think is the best player of all time? And on the one hand, I do think it's not really relevant because all the videos should stand on their own. But at the same time, it is kind of an interesting thing that I was making the case for 7 players that I was basically lying about.
Yeah.
But, for me, if I just rattle off the 8, let's see, I'd have Jordan 1, then LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Wilt Chamberlain, Tim Duncan. That's my 8.
Yeah, Tim Duncan did surprise me. I remember seeing that. And I was like, oh, I've never kind of heard this take before, but I was super down. Like, it made me want to hear more about it, and it made a lot of sense, the stuff you were saying in the video.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's one of the things. Yeah, the Tim Duncan video. I love that video. I'm very proud of it, but I still have a bunch of issues with it because it's the first thing I made. But I do appreciate the fact that so many people were like, Tim Duncan, the greatest basketball player ever. And then they're like, you know what? Fuck. Maybe.
The fundamentalist.
Yeah, the big fundamental, man.
Because you're just like, dude, it's someone we grew up with. Like, literally, probably my whole life watching basketball, Tim Duncan was there.
Yeah, and he's just, a quiet somebody. Yeah. I forget who it was, but they compared Tim Duncan to Cracker Barrel, where it's like nobody will ever bring it up, but nobody has a bad thing to say about it.
Exactly.
It's like it's always been there. It's consistent. Nobody's going to complain if you go there. And looking back at it, it's like, oh yeah, he was one of the greatest. Like people say that one of the greatest players of all time. He is one of the greatest players of all time. I appreciate. I thought that was a nice tip of the hat to Tim Duncan by myself. If I can pat me on the back.
Yeah, we need to get Tim Duncan in here ASAP. I wonder if he sees it. That'd be cool if he's seen it, something like that. But he doesn't seem like the type of person that would care about anything like that.
I don't think he'd watch a 20-minute video just
about
talk about how great he is.
Yeah, he would probably hate that, actually. So never mind. Don't tell Tim Duncan about that video.
Keep it on the down low.
So you're saying there's a couple things you would want to change about it. Can you kind of go more into that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure. So that I'd have to rewatch it, but some of the I suck at graphic design. And so some of the graphics in that Tim Duncan video are horrific. The decision to have like his college stats and his pro stats, while interesting, I think ultimately just kind of slowed the video down and maybe bogged it down a little too much. There's some editing things I wish I could have done better. Some like leftover frames. They weren't framed properly. I wish I could change those. And then there was just an enormous factual error at the end of the video, which is I really like the ending of the video. I think it's a good climax to the case. I say that he has the highest winning percentage of any team sport athlete ever. And that is just factually untrue. I mean, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird have higher win percentages than him. There's hockey players. It's just factually untrue. And I don't know where I got it from.
Yeah. You're like, what was I thinking? It seems so
I'm just
obvious.
like, I think I just heard somebody say it, or maybe I made it up. I don't know. So I really wish I could change that. But for the most part, it's just the little stuff. That still bugs me, though. I think about it, probably like twice a week.
Twice. It still is killing you. And then it's just going to keep growing too.
Yeah.
You're spreading that misinformation to so many people.
I know. The more views it gets, I'm like, fuck, I'm lying to these people.
This is definitely going to stay with you your entire life. So get ready for that. Is there anything part of your process that you really want to improve upon moving forward?
Totally. I think one of the things that I wish I could get better at is the actual video editing, the presentation, like you were talking about. For the most part, I use, just normal clips, just clips of the basketball, of the plays or the players or whatever I'm talking about at the time. And I think that's a good way of conveying what I'm trying to talk about and, add context to whatever point I'm trying to make. But I think that I could definitely get better at not necessarily finding better things, but presenting them in a more interesting way. Maybe some more motion, maybe some more graphics, maybe something just to make it a little more visually pleasing instead of just like 20 minutes of straight highlights.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That's just a nitpick on of mine. And then, as far as the writing goes, as far as the script goes, I would like to introduce humor to it in a way that's natural and not just like, I need to make this funny, I'll just punch a joke in here, Dude,
one with you look like that Heat player. I forget what his name was, but that was that
Duncan Robinson.
That made me laugh so hard when you did that.
I know people always, people tweet it at me now, and I really like it. I'm glad that that's like a joke now.
Yeah,
because in my head I'm like, someday I'm gonna meet Duncan Robinson and just like get a picture with him, and it is going to be the best day of my life. I don't care what I have to do to make it happen. I'm gonna make it happen.
That'll be great.
But yeah, so just kind of, and it's part of developing a voice and being more and more comfortable with it is being able to tweak it and play with it and be adventurous with it and add some more humor, add some more color to it here and there, so that it isn't just, I don't want to be preachy for 20 straight minutes, just like giving a lecture about basketball. I want it to be, fun, engaging, all that kind of stuff.
What do you think is the most important part of your process?
Of the process, I would say the script. The script is the thrusting point. It's, as far as the series videos that I've made, they're persuasive arguments. And so being able to articulate the points that I'm trying to make and make them, persuasive, try to make them engaging and try to make somebody think about something in a way they haven't before. If you are a Michael Jordan fan and I'm making a video about Wilt Chamberlain, you're going to be dispositioned coming into it to disagree with everything that I say. So I have to make sure that in my script, I'm presenting the information in such a way that it isn't over the head, it isn't super exclamatory or inflammatory, but that is still making a really strong case. And I think that's all based in the script. I can know all this information and I can just tell you, well, did you know that this happened and that this happened and that this happened? But I'm just spitting facts at you. Packaging it together into the script, I think, is what brings it all together.
Sell it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I know you're doing the team-based videos right now. Where do you kind of see yourself after this? Do you have any? I guess you do have that big whiteboard of ideas. You said you got any cool ones that you can share right now?
So once I'm done with this series, and it's funny because I was really excited to start the series, and I am excited to keep working on it, but I have so many ideas now that I want to get it done so I can work on those. A bunch of players, a bunch of teams, a bunch of current players too. I'd love to be able to branch out into the current players, but the guy I'm the most excited to talk about, he's so interesting and fascinating to me, is Bill Walton, who played for UCLA in the 70s, won two championships, one of the great college players of all time, one or two behind Kareem. He got into the league. He was so good so soon. They won a championship. He was going to be the MVP. He was like a transcendent player. He was going to be like the next Bill Russell. And then all these foot injuries, back injuries, was never the same. And he's just so interesting because I know I'm rambling about Bill Walton. I'm giving away all of the meat of this story.
Yeah, you're not gonna have a video.
But like I said, I don't get to speak extemporaneously about like these players unless it's into a microphone, usually by myself. But he's so interesting because he played at UCLA for John Wooden, just like this hard-nosed Indiana guy, cut your hair and show up on time and, just salt of the earth American. And Bill Walton's this like 7'2" red-haired hippie, straight up hippie, who John Wooden had to bail out of jail for like demonstrating against the Vietnam War and all of this stuff. He's such an interesting guy, and the way he talks about his past and his injuries and finally being able to get onto the 1986 Celtics and win a championship one more time. It's just fascinating to me. It's such an interesting story, and I'm really pumped to someday work on that.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, here's one for you. Who is the greatest team of all time, and why is it the 2004 Detroit Pistons?
Somebody said that
that's right. Yeah.
I will come clean right now, Ben, and I will tell you the 04 Pistons are not on my list.
Oh, dude.
I am sorry to tell you that.
It's rigged.
But I actually came up with 8 other teams that were better than the 04 Pistons.
Okay, all right. Well, the first one was about the Lakers, and we whipped their ass.
Yeah, the 01 Lakers, who weren't like almost undefeated in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. But they fell.
But then
you
guys
to the
listen.
Pistons.
Huge props to the Pistons for kicking the one of the great underdog stories in sports history. I love it.
That's right. Hell yeah.
I used to have Ben Wallace's shoes when I was in middle school before I ever knew who he was.
Dude, Ben Wallace is a fucking god where I come from.
The man, dude.
Yeah.
Big Ben.
Oh my God. Yeah, here's a cool story for you. I went to the game right after the Malice in the Palace, the brawl, with my dad.
God.
Yeah, and we got there early, and we were sitting waiting for the game to start, and we got interviewed by like the local news, like, do you feel safe here at the game? And I was like, yeah, free Big Ben, yeah. It was awesome,
Big Ben died for our sins.
Yeah, for real. Dude, yeah. I love
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Palace, yeah.
That's so funny too, because you like went to that Pistons game, and I'm sure like half the players were suspended. So you're like watching like Tayshaun Prince on the bench.
Sheed was out, yeah.
That's funny.
That was a fun team growing up to watch.
But I would say that the best team ever is, and I haven't decided yet. I literally don't have a really strong opinion on it. So through the research, I'm hoping I can, form a stronger opinion. But it's either the 96 Bulls, 72 and 10, championship, Michael Jordan. Don't really need to explain too much. And then the 2017 Warriors, who didn't have the best record ever, but you look at their team and you're like, yeah, you can't beat them. You literally cannot beat them. So
yeah. I mean, you got a point there. I mean, that is too, like, they were so good. That's when I kind of fell out with basketball, you know, because it's
me too. Yeah,
it was the same teams, you know. Yeah,
it was the lowest point of, like, as obsessed as I am. Yeah, I was just like, I don't care. They're gonna kick the shit out of the Cavaliers, and they're gonna be the best team in basketball history for like the next 3 years, and they kind of were. So, but again, maybe that's a testament to how good they were. Maybe they're like the Alabama football of the NBA, where it's like, yeah, they're the best, and you got to give them credit, but that doesn't mean I have to enjoy it.
I guess we got to wait to see what you say in the video then. To get
I know. Now I've kind of shat on them and talked about how good they were at the same time, so I have to figure out what angle I want to take.
Clayton, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you. Is there anything you want to shout out? Tell the people where to find you, watch your stuff.
Sure. I'm on Twitter and YouTube, just Clayton Crowley. You can Google it. At Clayton Crowley on both things. And yeah, I'm really excited about the next few things that I'm making. And it's awesome to come on here and talk to you about it. I had an awesome time. I love that you got to go to the aftermath of the Malice at the Palace. That's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, you're welcome back on anytime, man. And just in general, if you ever want to talk hoops, I'm always down as well.
Dude, absolutely. I would absolutely love it.
All right. Well, that was another episode of the Talking Heads podcast. Thanks for watching.
Whoa, you're still here. Click up here to subscribe and click here to watch some of our other videos, you dingus.